Hello, so this is a quickie on a Tchaikovsky book by David Brown. It is 2 volumes in one. So I finished one of them. It's the third and fourth volumes. Finished in the start in the 70s, and I think this one was the third and fourth volumes were completed in 1990. So it's quite a hefty tome or tome, whatever the word is. Not as big as the one which I got as a prize. Yeah. No, it wasn't a prize. No. But I got given one. Which is the famous Poznansky one, which is very big, about maybe 2 or 3 times that size, but maybe not, maybe as many pages, and there are 2 volumes of them. Anyhow, it's still big, and the third volume is one that I've just finished. I've got the fourth one to go, and to be honest, it is. I was going to say it's incredibly boring, but actually it's not. It's just that it doesn't cover any of his greatest works. I mean, not in detail. One of my favourite works, as far as I know, he did write in this period, which is the Serenade for Strings. Yeah, that one. The Serenade for Strings. But he doesn't talk about it very much in this. He does talk about the first, second, and third suites, though, which is the same kind of music. I don't really know any of them. I've listened to them all now, and there's not much to differentiate them really from an orchestra. A symphony. But obviously there are obvious differences, But basically, if I was someone like Tchaikovsky, I would have called those suites symphonies as well, because just add a few drums and things like that, add some timpani and so forth. What I found interesting actually was the influence of Berlioz and his Symphonie Fantastique, because that's my favourite symphony, along with Beethoven's Seventh and Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony and Schubert's Eighth or Ninth Symphony. Anyway, but the Symphonie Fantastique by Berlioz permeates a lot of the Tchaikovsky's thought, and what's interesting is that he was influenced by Beethoven's Seventh Symphony, of course. So that's a sort of interesting link, anyway. Coming back to this book, apart from those 3 suites, it talks a little bit about the Manfred Symphony and a little bit about his work, Joan d'Arc, and these an opera. Okay, Mazeppa. Did he do Mazeppa as well? I think Mazeppa. Manfred he did. Anyway, basically, kind of they were none of the major works really. Here, which, as he explained, doesn't necessarily mean that the biography is going to be boring, and in fact, he was keen to point out that it might actually be all the more interesting for finding out the character of Tchaikovsky and so forth, for knowing more about his day-to-day existence. Okay, so that was all. It didn't interest me as much as it could have really, except that to describe him as being quite a complex character, both neurotic and level-headed at the same time. I, to be honest, I couldn't establish anything about his intimate life, which has been obviously a subject of many essays and so forth. I think, like Schubert, his death as well, I haven't yet got to that, because I think I sort of skipped ahead and looked at those pages, and it's not covered in detail. Someone's letter, someone's reminisce seems to suggest, and it happens to correspond with the days that he was absent, so maybe such and such could have happened, this so-called court of honor and so forth. But in terms of his intimate life, shall we say, it's not established really here. I mean, I haven't read the first two biographies, but I've read other biographies of him actually. I think another one by David Brown, if I'm not mistaken, but it was a short one. In any case, and also Tchaikovsky Remembered, which is set in recollections. But I think, and I've also read their correspondence. Now I think about it, I've read their correspondence between Nadezhda von Meck and Tchaikovsky. Yeah, as far as I remember, and so as long as I'm not mistaken, that with Chekhov's correspondence um, with with that actress. I can't remember her name now. So I read that book as well. That's all about his correspondence. I'm pretty sure I read. No, I do. I am mistaken. I am thinking of the Chekhov one. Yeah, I never read. I just read a lot of his letters to Nadezhda von Meck. I think all of which are in that big double volume by Poznansky, if that's his name, Poznansky, and the other person whose name I can't remember. And by the way, this Tchaikovsky, the material in the Tchaikovsky, in the one by Poznansky, that big double volume, I think that only came out in about 2002, I think, and a lot more material has came out for that to be written, which this guy Brown didn't have access to. Anyway, it's a fairly interesting read, but it doesn't cover the big works, so I'm sad. And if it was, as I think it was, if it did cover the year that the Serenade for Strings, which is such a genius work, such a wonderful work, was written, then it's very sad. And I'm pretty certain that the March Slav was not written during this period, but it is talked about in his correspondence with Balakirev. And I didn't realise how much of an influence Balakirev had on him, so that was interesting. That was something which I had been told about, but I hadn't comprehended the significance of Balakirev. It talks about their falling out, basically, but about the debt which Tchaikovsky owed to that musical master. There's some. I mean, it's quite interesting, but it's not the best biography I've read. But I am looking forward to reading about the Sixth Symphony, which will be in the next book, of course, which is and about how he died and all the evidence which is given there, which I've looked at briefly, as I say. He also covers his piano music, which I've had a further look at, and looked further at October, part of the seasons. I learned June, and I've realised that actually October is, I don't know why it's hailed as such a masterpiece. I don't think it particularly is. And in fact, it takes a bit which had already been done in June, which is the rising chromatic bit. But that's just by the by. That's an observation that I've made. I think I'm just making a video here. Let's have a look and see how long it's got. 6 minutes, and darling, and then I'm gonna. Then it should be ready. Yeah, the bit that goes da 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 da. Basically, the beginning of the Barcarolle, which is the June one. Anyway, obviously it's got a pleasant. The voices he uses in October are very ingeniously done and all that. Anyway, that's part of the piano music which is covered in the next book. That's right. So a little bit, as well as the Sixth Symphony. So I'll be looking forward to that. This did cover the second concerto as well, and I think the third concerto, this is interesting for me. It was never meant to be more than one movement. The third concerto, which I never knew. I thought it was supposed to be three, but he died before he could do the other two or something like that. It was only supposed to be one movement, that third concerto. I had not listened to them, and the second concerto with the cello and all that. And it was quite interesting to read about. I quite like that second concerto, but it's true to say that he does. I mean, I noticed that he copies basically passages from or at least one passage from the first concerto in the second concerto, which was sad to hear. Really, I mean, it was pretty much an exact copy. I can't remember which bit now. And I think Tchaikovsky came to realise it was inferior or something, but it's markedly inferior, of course, to the first concerto. But it's it was quite interesting to read about the second concerto and to compare and how, basically it is vastly inferior, basically because of a dearth of invention. It was interesting to read about Tchaikovsky's melodic inventiveness, which of course is pretty much second to none, along with Schubert. And because it was interesting to hear to read about his criticism of Mussorgsky. He says that Mussorgsky and Debussy, I can't remember if it's both of them or just one of them, but their paucity of melodic invention, and how he was saying that they're very good at, and also Glazunov, he was saying that he didn't have that melodic invention. The music is very good with the harmony, especially Glazunov and so forth, but there's no direction so much. And I think he was talking also about that with Mussorgsky and about a little bit about Debussy, because von Meck also employed Debussy, and Debussy, I think she gave Debussy some pieces by Tchaikovsky. Tchaikovsky did have a look at Debussy, and he said that he didn't think so much of it. There was a tiny bit about that. That's interesting, because Debussy thereafter, of course, produced some of the greatest works in the piano repertoire. So yeah, it'll be interesting to read about the piano works, which must be an overview of his piano works, and the Sixth Symphony in the next one, and the Fifth Symphony as well, which I don't know very well at all. So yeah, it's an interesting book. I would recommend it, but I would recommend it in case you didn't hear me there. It's a bit like the Russian Мне нравится and Мне не нравится sound very similar. So if you didn't hear me there, I said I would recommend it, not I wouldn't recommend it. And by the way, about the Мне нравится and не нравится, the best way to say it, as I heard a few days ago, was you don't say the мне when you say мне не нравится, you just say не нравится, and it should be clear, and they say мне не нравится, because they always confuse that with мне нравится, so they say тебе нравится, не нравится. That's just by the by. So мне нравится та книга. Okay. Thank you, спасибо и всего хорошего.